I hope this worked with the recording. I haven't yet received the messages of the downloadable ones. Okay, so those were the high-level ones for NASA, right? And then we had here as well knowledge networks and communities, kind of from a global perspective as a co-production cycle kind of set. Now, the next slide deck is actually about how to identify the critical knowledge in organizations. And this is kind of to a proxy for knowledge management. And that is why I was actually keen to do this, to kind of see what you can focus on. And the idea here is to support the projects with a best knowledge strategy, basically, that is fit for your projects. And as you noticed, in our cases that we just had now with sustainability, we jumped very quickly into the problem and our issue space and came along with solutions to these problems. So it's actually quite tricky to recognize a knowledge strategy or services that can do so. So, oh, I'm going again backwards. So here, this is a recognition actually of this, yeah, that you arrive very quickly at cognitive overload if you break this all down. So it's often better to think of the overall strategy and then let the content that the teams that are involved in it actually pull it, right? So that you have a system to address it. And it is well more crucial for success. So if your solutions from the knowledge perspective are already too detailed, this becomes often quite difficult for projects to pull because they may not follow the same reasoning. And well, so that is kind of the whole notion here of crucial for the success of organization, that you kind of reduce the cognitive overload, and accepted is as well that significant accepted that is or has significant value, engages executives through and thought and focus, and solves the most important problems. So selection of critical knowledge requires dialogue, can be top down, bottom up, but should be visible in a map or fishbone diagram. And I have those a little bit later. So shall we go in the knowledge types? We had those already a little bit. So we had the kind of codified knowledge. This is often written down. Actually, codification just means written down. So here we have as well scientific knowledge, engineering and technical knowledge, business processes, know-how, and social knowledge. Actually, political savvy, arguably, if you're a politician, is as well technical and craftsmanship. But social knowledge is normally how you work together with other people, right? So they're critical for the mission success, of course. And yeah, knowledge management is critical for sustaining and expanding the use of intellectual capital across projects and generations as well. So increasing collaboration across borders, supporting people in executing projects effectively and efficiently and effectively. Yeah, there are different domains, and this is actually from my paper. So, and we kind of had those, and I was keen to kind of list them at least once, that you have them as a reference. So we had the sharing knowledge as best practice, and well, there are some more. So I will revisit those with the cases that we have later, but just know that there are actually studies that list them in a lot of detail. And just to make it worse, this is my other paper. So it's sadly not yet published, but those are typical processes and infrastructure and roles you can take on. So, and they come with certain benefits. So we will work through that. So yeah, so it's kind of, you see here, for example, the communities of practice. This is a well-researched topic, when they're actually good for projects, when they're kind of hindering or actually not so good. And then as well, creation or utilization of a knowledge database, or incorporation of lessons learned into strategies, or we did them a lot, brainstorming sessions, right? By the way, just for political correctness, I should point out, if you do the keywords, that is what you have to look for. Yeah, so I recognize that this should be something else. Establishing knowledge maps, this is similar to what Siobhan had mapped out with her standard. But there as well knowledge audits, benchmarks, usage of rewards and sharing strategies, storytelling. So all of those topics are pretty well researched in the project management space. And they come with advantages and disadvantages. So I think this is maybe important to recognize. So that is where the high level example that we just had, here we can just assess what strategies may be a good fit, not so much as in how far they actually get implemented. So this is more a question normally for the project team when you provide something like that. Now, there is a very pragmatic framework, and this is why I put the list before. So a favored concept, and this is kind of a utility argument, is the IceBased Framework from Max Boisot, I think, a framework for strategic management of knowledge. So here the understanding of how knowledge is generated, diffused and internalized and managed by individuals and organizations. Oh, maybe a new term. What is diffused? What is a diffusion? Anybody? Okay, so when something diffuses, it kind of lingers in. Yeah, so a bad example. Yeah, electricity diffuses, but that doesn't help anybody. But the notion here is that. So, for example, I've learned something. We have a coffee meeting, yeah, and over the coffee I tell you what I've learned, yeah, and then this is really on the dot what you would like to learn too, and then you tell somebody else, yeah. So this is basically the idea. It's kind of a cascading in or a thickering in of ideas. In a broad idea. Actually, I think I have a slide against it as well, a little bit further down, and from this understanding, the degree of structure of information, codification and abstraction with its capacity for diffusion in the organization system is what he kind of researched. So when you come to the framework, yeah. So first, his key question was, what is the value of knowledge goods? And that gets, so this is commodified knowledge as a service or as a product, right? So he kind of noticed here that tacit knowledge is unstructured, abstract, and uncodified. So, and flows very slowly, often requires face-to-face interaction or people being really in the same space, yeah, to discover it. Then codified and abstract knowledge diffuses rapidly throughout the population. So particularly if it's of interest, yeah. So if you write down the recipe for a magic sauce, yeah, then if everybody wants to try that magic sauce, it shares normally quite rapidly. Yeah, that's the idea. So then the structuring of knowledge increases its utility while decreasing its value, the scarcity. So the value of knowledge is inherently unstable and dynamic. And he kind of thought about it in particular, thinking of a future of a knowledge economy. Yeah, so what would that look like? So he came then, and there's a wonderful joke to be had. Shall we do this? Right, okay, let's do first the formula and then the funny video. So the idea here is the utility of knowledge is increasing, but at the same time, there's a maximum value unstable zone. When you go beyond then you're basically building unhealthy secrets. Yeah, and that is what the wonderful video is for. So here you have structured information. So here's unstructured, undiffused, and then here is structured, and utility goes up. And if it's diffused, then you can see how it kind of how sharing of information is basically perceived. So what does it mean for us? Can anybody help me translate this? Okay, what does that mean? Anybody?
I would give it a go. So on the left-hand side, the more structured the information, the more people can use the information. It will increase the utility of the information. For example, if you have, say, a process, more people can use the process. But if it's unstructured, you can't explain the process to other people, and you can't use that information. And horizontally, if the information is undiffused, that means you don't share information to a lot of people. But that would also mean not many people can use the information. So utility would be 0. And the more diffused the information, more people can use it. But at the same time, as you mentioned earlier in the class, it's a matter of having an advantage, competitive advantage or not. So if the information is more diffused, you don't have that advantage anymore. So the maximum value would be when you have that orange
tangent here,
yeah.
Yeah. Actually, it's the opposite of a tangent. Yeah, but so yeah, so and just logically, why if it's like totally structured, why is it not maximum value? Should not be here maximum value?
I guess if it's too structured, you wouldn't allow flexibility. That will mean if you apply the knowledge in different areas, you need flexibility to allow adaptability. And when you translate the knowledge, you need structure, but not too much, rigid structure. And that's why when you reached the maximum point of the structures, if you have too much structure, then you can't really use the information the way that it's applicable and useful to you.
Yeah. So there's a tipping point where the utility is super applicable to something very context specific, but it makes it as well less transferable. Yeah, very good. So okay, yeah, let's go one back. Okay, I show you quickly my favorite videos to this. So they are about the pain point. First off, yeah, if you decide, so the first is about how to claim IP and how to become, so it's a comic, yeah, it's supposed to be a joke about the dark side of not sharing knowledge, and I hope you will enjoy it as such. Oh, but I've stopped sharing because I shared the slide. Oh, this may actually not record, but okay, we try it anyway. Okay, can you see that? Can you hear it as well?
No, Robert, we can see, but we can't hear.
Oh, okay. Okay, I stopped sharing from, oh, maybe I can do it in the sound.
You could share your sound, share computer sound. So go to view options up there.
Yeah, this is exactly where I am. Do not. But where is this? Wait a minute. So share.
It
You
should be
stop
up there.
share. Yeah.
So not down, Robert. Go up to view options at the top of the screen. Should be up there. The drop down bar.
Or if you just
Share computer sound. Okay, yeah, got it. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, second attempt. Let's see if it works.
What's that thing you're working on?
Well, it's a light bulb.
A light bulb, light bulb. Yeah, I invented that. Me, I'm Thomas Edison. I invented the light bulb. What's it do?
It lights up a room using electrical.
Lights up a room using electrical stuff. I was about to say that because I invented it. What are you working on?
It's a phonograph.
Phonograph. I knew that because I invented it. I'm Thomas Edison. I rule. Look it up,
Edison. Okay. So that is so it's a delicate process when it comes to knowledge sharing, ownership and property rights. Yeah. Okay, this is maybe just a silly joke, and it doesn't get much better, sadly. What is the impact of not sharing knowledge or kind of discoveries? Yeah, and I hope you enjoy this kind of humor. If not, then this was probably just a cheap shot for me. But the other one is, yeah, actually quite. Let's see if it works.
Look at Edison over there with his damn electricity. Hey, Edison! How about sharing some of those light bulbs, huh?
Hey, figure it out for yourself, man.
We're freezing our asses off over here!
Hey, man, how do you think I feel? You know, you get to look at my great house. I got to look at that dark thing. Huh? Hey, what is that, a candle over there? Oh, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's a candle. We're freezing over here. Oh. We have none of my family's taken a bath in a month. We stink. It's...
Okay, I guess you get the idea. So the point here, now I've subscribed to something Family Guy, but yeah, so the idea here is, I have again to stop sharing and reshare. So what did we on a humorous note see here? What is the danger here in this theorem if we kind of trace that in a maximum value notion of knowledge?
So it's a bit. Sorry, I'm confused. Can't dance.
Okay, so so what did we see? Does everybody know Thomas Edison? Oh, okay. Maybe the joke was so Thomas Edison is the father of electricity. So he kind of claimed the IP, or well, he claimed to have invented the light bulb. So, and then he was actually the one that sold light bulbs and promoted basically electrification of houses, and but then actually, to be fair, made the light bulb concept for houses available, and that kind of started off the electrification of cities and how you probably know most modern cities nowadays. So, okay, so there are two, it's a double joke. So basically, Thomas Edison was is overemphasized in history. So in reality, we know that the local colleges invented the stuff, and he just basically claimed it and sold it. But then the other part is that if he wouldn't have shared his ideas, then you would have arrived basically at the dynamic that you saw there in the video, that a lot of people wouldn't have electricity nowadays. Yeah, so knowledge sharing as a concept is, of course, a key element. So I don't want to Yeah, so in a nutshell, if you're in the commercial world, and most of you have probably been there, you will notice that knowledge sharing is normally not very high on the agenda when it comes to sharing deep insights or discoveries from projects. But when it comes to receiving knowledge from other companies or learning how they're doing it, this is normally very popular. So the idea is that there's an exchange required if we want to advance as a industry, or as well if we want to advance as society, but that is a very far-fetched shot from that. Yeah. Okay. Now, yeah, let's. So, yeah, from a modeling point of view, so this was kind of where the scarcity and value theorem comes from. So he kind of further quantified this. So he kind of had a look at world-class, highly experienced engineers, and this was about engineering companies, may intuit how to solve technical problems that nobody else can. And here the knowledge was kind of in this tacit notion and may be unable to explain their intuition. So this is kind of the notion of practitioner expertise and intuition. And rainmakers in strategy consulting firm know in their bones how to steer a conversation or discussion, develop a relationship and close a deal, but they would have trouble kind of telling colleagues why they made particular move at particular moments. And this is actually still something that is very difficult, of course, to be taught and kind of translated. But having said that, so theoretically, this has been kind of described very well in Hubert Dreyfus' paper with his brother Stuart. So they looked kind of at the novice idea and how people achieve expertise. So from that side, this paper is actually excellent. But then they explain as well what expertise actually is, and how expertise is always a phenomena of the practitioner. Yeah, so that this kind of relates to that very concept. Yeah. And actually, there's another story around this. So nowadays we can actually describe very well how very successful people steer conversations and how they kind of negotiate so successful. And that has a lot to do with your intuitional mimic and gestic, which is as well kind of an iterative process of learning. And some people are more talented, so it's accounted towards things like charisma. But yeah, if you go in with, for example, face recognition algorithms and kind of mimic and gestic and eye tracking, then you can actually come up with repeated pattern that kind of drives something like this. But how that can be taught is actually quite tricky. Yeah, so the transferability of the knowledge is quite challenging. So critical knowledge process is insights from the mapping exercise, enables the team to recommend several initiatives aimed at developing and disseminating the tacit knowledge as well, such as program to help employees who had a deeper understanding of geopolitical influences to put some structure around their knowledge and to pass it on to others in the company, and a program to identify capabilities of key suppliers, determine how the organization could work more strategically with them. So yeah, that is kind of, again, the old process domain. So here, knowledge cartography can be kind of divided into either a process or a domain-oriented approach. So the process is really about, well, deals with the cartography method, which uses modeling, description, and analysis of business processes to determine critical knowledge. And the domain approach is more where we try to make an analysis from a mass of information in order to organize it in a logic different from functional approach. Yeah, so this could be thematically or depending on how you need it, right? This could be structured around process stages. Yeah. So this is normally goal-oriented. So to ignore the functional structure of the firm, grouping activities or knowledge domains. yeah, and I mentioned already a few, so it really depends how you want to kind of tackle this. So here in the example of the engineering company, they kind of had the knowledge assets identified. So, and very similar, so that was kind of mapping unstructured and undiffused to diffused and structured. And then on the kind of bottom, they kind of found tacit knowledge of lead engineers. That was very significant. So in the company, the teams kind of relied on that. When it came to structured but undiffused elements, it was the proprietary blueprints. Yeah, and those are normally the blueprints where you make sense, and it's a little bit similar to yeah, the blueprint is normally the driving feature of the design. So this is actually quite hard to make, and it's normally a question of iteration and sense making. Yeah? So this is normally where a lot of knowledge is built into, but this is of course invisible. Yeah? So this is tricky to repeat. And then in the other elements, you can see here insights into client strategic needs, company-specific technical skills, project management capabilities, quite important as well, company standard operating procedures, and then worldwide engineering community of practice. So this is a little bit what I meant. They are kind of course, knowledge networks and communities of practice that kind of reinforces, and this depends, of course, how well they're connected. And then company product specification published on the website is, of course, super specific and super structured. But the value spot somewhere here, right? Company operating procedures and proprietary blueprints, that is where the value of the money lies. And somewhere around here is where project management capabilities. Yeah, so they are a central part of that. Yeah. Okay, let me have a look. We are nearly out of time. I have a few more slides there. Oh, I was really keen to actually do with you the structured questions. Yeah, this is a knowledge categories that we haven't had yet. Okay, we have. Okay, let's turn it around, and I do it the other way around, and we jump a little bit into the questions, and maybe just elaborate for 10 minutes on it, so we get a little bit a feel. So, oh, but this, yeah, 10 minutes.
Probably
Okay, we
like
do
half
that
an
next
hour.
time. Yeah, I was just thinking as well, this will be again half an hour before we actually get to this. Let's do it the other way around. I show you maybe an applied case study, and we sign this day today off as a lecture day. Yeah, and maybe discuss this a little bit against this. But for that, I have to go, oh, that was the answers, but let's do it the other way around. Okay, let me advertise one of the cool studies that one of my students did. Okay, so, and maybe we do this a little bit as a discussion. So in Volvo Technology, this was literally the case that I mentioned earlier. We kind of were interested in looking at knowledge sharing. So this is very specific. And if you go in the literature, it's the references we have covered. You will see culture and communication, information and communication technology, and kind of the processes or organizations are kind of key driver on how successful this is. But just to get a feel for what knowledge management actually is, I wanted to show you a little bit the mechanisms that are behind it. So yeah, so measures, knowledge sharing behavior were our measures. So we had here as well a codification strategy. So that is how we write things down, right? And then we have the project memory system and the project memory. So what's the difference here? So codification, for example, was a traditional and new information and communication technologies, documents, databases, emails, right? And then the memory was explicit declarative knowledge, so maybe specifications, instructions, definitions. And then there was as well the more people-focused strategy. So that is memory representation, personal interactions, and on the project memory, it was a tacit and procedural knowledge. So maybe competencies, values, norms of the organization. And you can then, of course, stratify that in terms of your learner, yeah, versus individual and institutionalized. And that gets you actually quite far. In our case, we had another driver. So with a global company, you have, of course, geographical dispersed and nature of work problems, so unique or standardized. And that gives you a typology. But I wanted to show you actually where you arrive with that. So the main issue in our analysis was in projects. You have the contributor, and this is from the former project. They write amazing reports, and I really do mean this. In Volvo, it's normally quite structured. It's wonderful lessons learned against the project. And it's in a repository. It's actually kind of ordered by project number, so nobody could find anything unless you had a very good memory and could make sense of it. And there was another issue. If you ask someone, they said like, oh yeah, I wrote a report on it. And then normally, if they didn't follow up and said like, hey, what was the number? They had no chance of finding it. And that was the issue as well. Most of the project managers, they were asking people. So they were looking for knowledge. They were like, hey, have you worked on a project like this? Who could I talk to? So they were actually interested in personification. They wanted to talk it. And they were looking for answers from people, not in the repository. So it looks quite simple, but the key here is they're pulling information and they're pushing information, right? So those are different strategies, and it's a mismatch. So we had that repeatedly, and the key is, of course, to align it. Now, let's have a look a little bit more detailed, how people actually look for knowledge. And we just did this. This was our exercise earlier. So actually, I think one team did this, right? Blank sheet approach. I think the plastic issue discussion was really discussing the problem and trying to come up with a solution from scratch, right? Then there's kind of find internal written material. So you go online, you crunch maybe YouTube or Google or something, yeah? Or in our case, it would be the Monash library, right? Other alternative, ask a colleague, or search externally. So again, now with Google, everybody can do it, or phone up consultancy or other experts in the area, right? So those are the traditional strategies, but they come with an effort to benefit ratio. And that is maybe something I want you to take away. When we design a knowledge strategy, that is what you're fighting. So the effort to benefit ratio. And in Volvo, by the way, this is a rough sound estimate, but a quantification for that. But the preferred strategy in Volvo and in Sweden in general was surprisingly ask a colleague, closely followed by find internal written material or Googling. Yeah, so they were competitors, but normally the more succeeding strategies in Volvo, you were expected to talk to your kind of manager or lead engineer, and then this was perceived as legitimate. So that was another driver. So that means as well that you have to rethink how you're matching this. Now, of course, in this framework, this looks now super simple. So if you have a look at this, that just means codification strategy. Well, you have to kind of make it accessible for the learner if they are looking for it, to actually being able, hey, why is it not? Okay, it's nearly able to find, yeah. So it was meant to go a little bit further down, but yeah, never mind. My animation didn't work here. Yeah, but so the idea is to either, if there's a learner, to make it part of the process, that they get the right documents and as well with relevant information categorized towards their needs. So this is actually not pushing, well, it's actually pulling into push the learner, if you want, yeah, that they are actually looking for the right information, and we can initiate this in a process before they start a project. You have kind of a personification, and they explain the kind of database how to use, and they meet the right people. So we actually did, of course, both, because yeah, Volvo is pretty good in this. So they wanted to have everything. So they had a briefing as well with the right, well, that was the other thing. They wanted to avoid that then the person finds the document and still doesn't understand it, and then goes again through all the company contributors and maybe ends up not finding out what they were after, or after multiple times talking to multiple people, finding the contributor, and often a question of your personal network in the company. So if you're new to company, your network is by default as well smaller. So it's a little bit a nightmare. And worse, often the better contributor, the outside contributor out of the network, is not even on their radar. So it's really a question of serendipity or luck, yeah, if they find this. So and we kind of try to address it as well, and that was a personification point. So we kind of pulled the publisher of the reports, or a senior person that had worked in similar projects, into a process meeting, a briefing before initiating a project of this, to kind of brief how they have approached it in the past, explain kind of their way of codification or their reports, how they structured them, and kind of mapping out as well who the people are that working there. So it's kind of a soft phone book approach combined with a hybrid setup. And in the end, this succeeded a lot. So the personification strategy took off and actually manifested a community of practice for junior project manager, kind of meeting senior project managers. And there were different kind of groupings. So the ones in Gothenburg actually met super regularly. They had a 2-weekly physical meet and then a weekly kind of phone video call kind of set up. And that was actually very successful, because it kind of discontinued this junior project managers feeling lost when they initially started in those big companies. Because initially, you start in a department, but a lot of those guys were sent throughout the companies and even to other companies, which kind of meant that it was a lot softer entry into the job as well. Yeah, and maybe to promote a little bit the knowledge management. So we notice, of course, organizational culture is defined as well as shared beliefs, values, and practices of a group or group within the organization. So if you want to succeed in something like this, culture is the crux. So you really need to have people buy into it and see if the values actually are mirrored by this, or if that is just something that doesn't fit. And if you try to instill it, this is an iterative process. So particularly if there are other cultures there before. And then as well, information technology is absolutely necessary. So today, even more so with the challenges of sustainability that we discussed, it's so global, right? So there's just no way of facilitating the coordination and communication costs without that. And yeah, the other one was, and again, not the best processes that can do everything. The key here is easy to use standards. Yeah, so shorter and simpler is better. So simplicity was a simple notion, but this is of course super hard. Yeah. So chosen on purpose, since AIM is easy to use, and little as possible additional effort. That was a key driver. Yeah, but in a way, we just confirmed what the literature had told us already, but that was a fun project. So I had 3 students working on this. And yeah, this is a read up if you're interested. And Teresa is now, I think, a program office leader in Linde, in a gas company. Not just that, but have a very, very successful. So this topic is a hot issue for a lot of companies. And I leave it with this, recognizing that my kind of questioning strike